Hello, and today we're going to determine a point on a number line. So we're going to use our best guesses, and most of the time we're going to use things that are halfway in between, but we're going to have to use our addition and subtraction knowledge to be able to solve these problems. So here, let's go ahead and skip these. We can come back to them later. But here, if I have 30 on my number line, right here, and if I have 50 on my number line, right here, what is the halfway point? Well, a lot of you already know that that halfway point is 40. Well, how could we do that? Well, I know that if I add 10 to 30, I get 40. And if I subtract that same amount from 50, subtract 10 from 50, I get 40. If I didn't know that 10 right away, I could always start with smaller things, adding 1, subtracting 1. Well, now I'm at 31, now I'm at 49. Okay, I keep going. And now I'm at 32, now I'm at 48. And you'd keep going until you reach the center. We're going to use that same idea, but this time we're going to use some fractions. So buckle up. Let's look at this example here. We have 0, we have a middle point, a midpoint, and 1. What is this midpoint? Well, a lot of us already know how to get there, but let's just try it out. Let's say I take my 0 and I add 1/2. What is 1 minus 1/2? Well, 1 minus 1/2, that's 2 halves minus 1/2 gives me 1/2. 0 plus 1/2 gives me 1/2. So I found my midpoint. I added the number and subtracted the number and found a middle point. Here we go. 1/4 and 1 1/4. Okay, so I'm going to add 1/4. I'm going to add 1/4. Well, if I add 1/4 to 1/4, I get 2/4, also known as 1/2. Here's my 1 1/4. I'm going to change that into an improper fraction, and this is going to be 5/4. So if I take 5/4 and I subtract 1/4, I get 3/4. Did I get the same answer? Or I'm sorry, 5/4 minus 1/4 is 4/4. 4/4, which is the same as 1/2. Did I get the same answer? No. So right now I'm at 1/2 and I'm at 1/2. So I'm going to go again. And I'm going to add 1/4 and I'll subtract 1/4. Let's see, 1/2 plus 1/4. That's the same as 2/4 plus 1/4, which gives me 3/4. Here we have 1/2, which is the same as 4/4. 4/4 minus 1/4 gives me 3/4. Haha, we found our midpoint here at 3/4. Now, if I could have sped this up a little bit, I would have seen that I could have started and added 1/2 and subtracted 1/2 to get to my midpoint, that middle point between those two numbers. Okay, let's look at 1/2 and 1 1/2. Well, I see the halves, so I feel like I should start with a half. So I'm going to go ahead and add 1/2. Well, 1/2 plus 1/2 gives me 2 halves, which equals 1/2. 1 1/2 is 3 halves. So I can do 3 halves minus 1/2, which gives me 2 halves, which equals 1/2. So here, my middle point is 1/2. Both of these are half away from the 1/2. Look at this one. Ooh, now we have different denominators. it might make it easier for me to make them have the same denominator. So let's go ahead and change this to 2/4. So do we want to start with fourths? Why not? Because that's where we're here, what our denominator is. So let's go ahead and add a fourth. Let's go ahead and subtract a fourth. This one is 7/4 minus 1/4 gives me 3/4. Ah, what's wrong with my math today? 6/4. 2/4 minus plus 1/4 gives me 3/4. I haven't quite found the middle, so I'm going to go ahead and add a fourth. I'm going to subtract a fourth. 3/4 plus 1/4 gives me 4/4. 6/4 minus 1/4 gives me 5/4. Well, I'm looking right now, and I can already tell 4/4 and 5/4. So let's try again. 4/4 minus 1/4 gives me 3/4. 5/4 minus 1/4 gives me 4. Or I'm sorry, this is supposed to be plus. Plus 1/4 gives me 5/4. Minus 1/4 gives me 4/4. Oh, I went too far past that midpoint. So now I'm at 4/4 and I'm at 5/4. 4/4 and 5/4. How in the world am I going to find something between 4/4 and 5/4? Well, I guess I could break it up into smaller pieces. What smaller pieces could I use? Well, I could use 8ths. I could break it up and I could use 8ths. That way I can get closer to that midpoint. Well, 4/4 as 8ths would be 8/8. 5/4 as 8ths would be 10/8. So if this is 8/8 and this is 10/8, what comes between 8/8 and 10/8? We would have 9/8. 9/8. You add an eighth, you subtract an eighth, and you get 9/8. So this one would be 9/8, also known as 1 and 1/8. Whew! That one was a bit of work. Let's look at the next one. Let's make these have the same denominator so that the math is easier for us to do. 1/2 and 2/2. Okay. Well, I know if I add a half, I'll be at 1. If I subtract a half, I'll be at 1/2. So that's too much for us. So we need to use smaller pieces. So what smaller pieces could we use? Well, I could change them into fourths because that would be a small piece. 2 times 2 is 4, 1 times 2 is 2, 2 times 2 is 4, 2 times 2 is 4. So now I have 2/4 and I have 4/4. Maybe some of you know what comes between 2/4 and 4/4. Well, if I add a fourth and I subtract a fourth, let's see, 2/4 plus 1/4 gives me 3/4. 4/4 minus 1/4 gives me 3/4. So that's got to be the value. That's got to be the value that we have for that midpoint. Let's go here. We have 3/4. Let's call this 4/4. Again, I don't have a fraction between 3/4 and 4/4, so we're going to make our pieces smaller. Oops. My giant ones have gotten more sloppy. Okay, and we're going to multiply that by 2. Let's just make it a little smaller. We get 6/8, we get 8/8. So if I have 6/8 here and I have 8/8 here, what comes between 6/8 and 8/8? A lot of you already know that'd be 7/8. We add an eighth, We subtract an 8, and we get 7 eighths. 7 eighths. Coming here again, we have 7 eighths here, we'd have 8 eighths. What would be between those? So let's make our fractions, our pieces a little smaller. Oops. Okay, so I'm going to multiply 8 times what? Let's do 8 times 2 is 16, 7 times 2 is 14, 8 times 2 is 16, 8 times 2 is 16. Now I have 14 sixteenths and I have 16 sixteenths. Well, what comes between 14 sixteenths and 16 sixteenths? You betcha. I'm going to add a 16th and I'm going to subtract a 16th. Add 1 16th to get 15 sixteenths. Subtract 1 16th to get 15 sixteenths. So that midpoint there is 15 sixteenths. 15 sixteenths. Notice how we're kind of getting smaller and inching our way middle, middle, middle. Here we have 15 sixteenths. Here we have 16 sixteenths. What is in between? What is in between? Well, let's go ahead and multiply by 2. We'd get 30 over 32. Multiply by 2, we get 32 over 32. Some of you already know what that would be. I'm going to add 1/32. I'm going to subtract 1/32, and I get 31/32. 31/32. So using this idea of finding midpoints and things like that, I wonder how we would do. I'm trying to figure out the value of these points here. What do you think the value of these points would be? Well, it's pretty difficult. Here we have A, 1/2, 2, and B. Ooh. So that means from here to here, we have 1.5 distance. 1.5 distance, also known as 3/2. Also known as 3/2. I broke that into 3 pieces. Say 1, 2, 3. Again, my drawing would need to be super accurate. I can see that this is going to be less than, let's see, because this would be 1.5, this would be 1, and that would be half. So this is going to be less than that 1. So it's going to be between 1/2 and 1. So that's the best I can do for finding that value right there. Okay. Using our same thought here, I see that the distance between B and 2 is a lot smaller than the distance between 1/2 and 2. So I know that this is not going to be as far as 1.5. It's not going to be as far as 1.5. So could it be a distance of 1? Could this be 3? Maybe, based on what we have here. Let's look at the top one. If this is 1 and this is 0, what are the possible values here? Could C be worth 1/2? No way. Could B? Maybe. B maybe could be 1/2. If B was 1/2, what would A be? A would be 1/4. And if A was 1/4, I'm assuming 3/4 would be somewhere here. So C would not be 3/4. Maybe C, let's see, this would be 6/8. So maybe C would be 7/8 for C. These are possible values there. The point of today's lesson was for us to be able to look at a number line and figure out values that would be between numbers.